The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the line of wagons crawling across the desert like dying beetles. Red dust coated everything the canvas tops, the sweating horses, the faces of the passengers who'd been foolish enough to believe the promises of a better life out west. It was August 1874, and the heat shimmered off the sand in waves that made the distant mountains dance like mirages. Clara Whitmore pressed a damp handkerchief to her throat, feeling the grit between her fingers. 3 months ago. She'd been teaching grammar to well-mannered children in a brick schoolhouse in Albany. Now she sat wedged between a snoring merchant and his sharp-elbowed wife, wondering if she'd traded one kind of death for another. "How much further to Fort Defiance?" she asked the driver when they stopped to water the horses. 2 days, ma'am. Maybe 3 if the wheels keep getting stuck in these blamed sand traps. He spat tobacco juice into the dust. "You got family waiting?" "No." The word came out harder than she intended. "I have accepted a teaching position." The driver's weathered face creased with something between pity and amusement. "Teaching out here well. I reckon those army brats could use some civilizing, though between you and me, it's not the children you need to worry about." He didn't elaborate, but Clara had heard the stories. Apache raids, settlements burned to ash, women taken and never seen again. She touched the small derringer hidden in her skirt pocket, a parting gift from her father. "I'm afraid I'd make a poor Quaker," he'd said, pressing it into her hands at the train station. "Sometimes turning the other cheek just gets you killed." The memory of her father's worried face made her chest tight. She'd left without telling him the real reason that Albany had become a cage lined with whispers and pitying looks. Poor Clara Whitmore, jilted at the altar. Augustus Van Dermott had waited until the wedding guests were seated, the organ poised to play, before sending his man with a note. "Circumstances have changed. I trust you'll understand." She understood perfectly. His father had discovered her mother's Irish blood, her grandfather's tavern, the wrong side of respectability that Clara's education couldn't quite polish away. In New York society, bloodlines mattered more than character. "Ma'am, you all right?" The driver was watching her with concern. "Perfectly well." She straightened her spine, a gesture that had become armor. "I've faced worse than heat and dust." The driver shrugged and called for the passengers to board. As Clara climbed back into the wagon, she noticed vultures circling to the south. The merchant's wife followed her gaze and crossed herself. "Bad omen, those birds. Death follows death out here." Clara said nothing, but she kept her hand near her pocket as the wagons rolled on. The attack came at sunset. They appeared from nowhere, riders materializing from the red rocks, like demons born from the stone itself. Not Apache, Clara realized with a shock, but white men with faces masked by bandanas. The war whoops they let loose were theater, meant to inspire the kind of terror that made people foolish. "Bandits!" the driver shouted, reaching for his rifle. The shot that answered him knocked him backward off his seat. Chaos erupted. Horses screamed. Women shrieked. The merchant tried to hide behind his wife's skirts. Clara found herself oddly calm, as if she were watching the scene from somewhere outside her body. She drew the derringer and aimed it at a bandit who'd leaped onto their wagon. "Well now," he drawled, eyeing the tiny gun. "What's a pretty little schoolmarm going to do with that?" She shot him in the shoulder. He howled and fell backward, but 2 more took his place. Rough hands hauled her from the wagon. She fought with a fury that surprised even her, clawing, kicking, using moves her brothers had taught her in the barn when Mother wasn't watching. But there were too many. "Feisty one," a bearded man backhanded her, sending stars across her vision. "Maybe we keep this one for—" A rifle shot cut him off. He toppled forward, revealing one of the cavalry escorts behind him. For a moment, Clara dared to hope. The soldiers had rallied, were fighting back, but they were outnumbered 3 to 1. She watched the young sergeant who'd tipped his hat to her that morning take a bullet to the chest. The killing was methodical after that. The bandits wanted no witnesses, no one to ride to Fort Defiance with descriptions. They shot the men first, then the women who wouldn't stop screaming. The merchant's wife died clutching her pearl necklace, as if it could save her. Clara waited for her turn, but it didn't come. The bandit she'd shot was arguing with their leader, gesturing at her with his good arm. She's pretty enough, and young, worth more alive. Worth trouble. You mean? The leader studied her with cold blue eyes. You know what Apache pay for white women. I know what Mexicans pay. Good money down in Sonora for household slaves, especially ones that look like her. Clara's stomach turned to ice. Death might be preferable to what they were discussing. The leader made his decision with a shrug. Your merchandise, your problem, but she slows us down. She's buzzard food. They tied her hands and threw her over a saddle like a sack of grain. The last thing she saw before they rode off was the sergeant's dead eyes staring at the darkening sky. They rode through the night, stopping only to change horses at a hidden camp where hard-faced men counted stolen goods by firelight. Clara memorized every detail, every face, though she doubted she'd live to testify. When dawn broke, they were deep in canyon country, red walls rising like prison bars on either side. "Where are you taking me?" she asked when they finally stopped to rest. The wounded bandit, she'd learned his name was Cole, laughed. "Curious thing. Aren't you most women would be crying by now? Tears won't change anything." Her throat was raw with thirst. "I prefer to know what I'm facing." "Smart, too smart." He offered her a canteen, watching as she drank. "There's a trading post 2 days south. Man there has connections across the border. You'll fetch a good price." "I'm an American citizen. People will look for me." "No, they won't." His certainty chilled her more than threats would have. "Army will find those wagons. Figure Apache got you. They'll make some noise about vengeance. Maybe hang a few Indians who had nothing to do with it, but they won't come looking in Mexico." Clara said nothing more, conserving her strength. She'd need it when the chance came. And it would come, she had to believe that. She hadn't survived Augustus's betrayal, hadn't crossed half a continent to end up a slave in Sonora. But as they rode deeper into the wild country, that certainty began to fray. The landscape grew more hostile with each mile, bare rock and thorny ocotillo, canyon walls that blocked out the sky. Even if she escaped, where would she go? The desert would kill her as surely as a bullet. On the second night, her chance came in unexpected form. They'd made camp in a box canyon, confident in their safety. The sentries grew careless, passing a bottle between them. Cole, fevered from his wound, had tied her to a scraggly juniper and fallen into restless sleep. Clara worked at the ropes until her wrists bled, finally loosening them enough to slip free. She crept toward the horses, praying the darkness would hide her. 20 feet, 10. Her hand was reaching for the nearest mount's reins when a shout split the night. The woman's loose. She ran, not for the horses, too late for that, but for the canyon mouth and the open desert beyond. Bullets whined past her ears. Boots pounded behind her. She scrambled over rocks, tore through thorny bushes that shredded her skirt, ran with the mindless panic of prey. They would catch her. She knew it even as she ran, but she would make them work for it. Would not go meekly to... Her foot caught in a rock crevice. She fell hard, pain shooting up her ankle. When she tried to stand, the joint gave way. Behind her, the bandits' laughter echoed off the canyon walls. Nowhere to run now. Schoolmarm. Clara dragged herself behind a boulder, pressing her back against the stone. She closed her eyes and thought of her father, her brothers, the life she'd never have. At least she would die free. That was something. But the killing shot never came. Instead, she heard Cole curse, heard running feet receding, heard silence. Complete, unnatural silence. Even the insects had stopped chirping. She peered around the boulder. The bandits were gone, vanished, as if the desert had swallowed them whole. Only their abandoned camp remained, fire still flickering. The hair on her neck rose. What could make hardened killers flee like frightened children? The answer came on silent feet. One moment she was alone. The next, a figure stood before her, tall, bronze-skinned, black hair falling past broad shoulders. An Apache warrior, she realized with a mix of terror and fascination. He wore traditional dress buckskin leggings, a cotton shirt, moccasins that had made no sound on the rocks. His face was angular, harsh, beautiful in the way a hawk is beautiful. He studied her with eyes the color of dark honey, taking in her torn clothes, bloody wrists, the way she held her injured ankle. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep and strangely gentle. "You are hurt." "English?" He spoke English. Clara found her voice. "Are you going to kill me?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. "The desert is already doing that. You will not last the day without help." It was true. She could feel the fever starting, her body's response to exposure and injury. "Then why are you here?" "I was tracking those men. They killed 2 of my people last moon." He gestured to the abandoned camp. "They will not kill again." Clara shivered despite the warmth. She hadn't heard screams, hadn't heard anything. Just that terrible silence and then empty camp. The warrior moved closer, and she saw details she'd missed: the rifle slung across his back, thoroughly modern, the knife at his belt, thoroughly not. Scars marked his arms and chest, each one a story of survival in this unforgiving land. "Can you walk?" he asked. She tried to stand and failed, gasping as pain shot through her ankle. "No." He nodded as if he'd expected this. "Then you have 2 choices. I leave you here with water and you take your chances. Or you come with me." "Come where?" "My people's camp. We have a healer." Clara almost laughed. Out of the cookpot, into the fire. Yet what choice did she have: die slowly in the desert or take her chances with the Apache? At least it would be a more interesting death than withering away in Albany, surrounded by sympathy and propriety. "I'll come." He lifted her as easily as if she weighed nothing. Careful of her injured ankle. This close, she could smell sage and smoke on his skin, see the weariness around his eyes. Not just a warrior, she realized. A man carrying burdens she couldn't begin to guess. "My name is Clara," she offered as he carried her to his horse, a painted pony that regarded her with intelligent eyes. He settled her on the horse's back before swinging up behind her. His arm came around her waist, steadying her, and she felt absurdly safe. "I am Taza," he said finally. "And you should know my people will not welcome you. They have lost too much to trust easily." "Then why save me?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried depth she couldn't fathom. "Because the desert brought you to me, and I have learned not to question its gifts, even when they come wrapped in thorns." As they rode into the rising sun, Clara closed her eyes and let exhaustion claim her. Whatever fate awaited her in Taza's world, it had to be better than the one she'd left behind. And if not, well, at least it would be a story worth telling. If anyone lived to tell it. The red desert stretched endless before them, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled over the mountains like a promise or a threat. Clara Whitmore, late of Albany, New York, rode into the unknown in the arms of her unlikely savior, while behind them the abandoned bandit camp smoldered and the vultures began their patient circling once more. Clara woke to voices speaking in a language that rolled like water over stones. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself lying on soft furs inside what appeared to be a traditional wickiup bent willow frames covered with grass and hides. Smoke from a small fire drifted up through the opening at the top, and the air smelled of sage and something medicinal. An elderly woman sat beside her, grinding herbs in a stone bowl. Her face was a map of years lived under the desert sun, but her dark eyes were sharp with intelligence. When she saw Clara watching, she called out something in Apache. Taza appeared in the doorway, having to duck his head to enter. In the daylight filtering through the lodge, Clara could see him more clearly. He was perhaps 30, with the kind of quiet strength that came from surviving in a harsh land. He wore different clothes, now cotton pants and a simple shirt that looked almost ordinary, except for the way he moved in them like a mountain cat. "You slept 2 days," he said, settling cross-legged near the fire. "Maria says the fever has broken." 2 days. Clara struggled to sit up, then thought better of it when the world tilted. There must be search parties." "There are." His expression gave nothing away. "They searched 20 miles north, where we left signs suggesting Apache took you in that direction. They will find nothing and return to the fort with stories of another woman lost to savages." The casual way he said it, as if her entire world hadn't just vanished, made her chest tight. "So I'm dead. To everyone who might care. I'm dead." Would they care? The question was gentle but piercing. You were alone on that wagon train. No husband, no family traveling with you. Running from something, perhaps. Clara looked away, hating how easily he read her. "That's not your concern." "Everything in my camp is my concern." His tone hardened slightly. "You are here, eating our food, using our medicine. This makes you my responsibility." The old woman Maria said something sharp in Apache. Taza responded in the same language, his tone respectful but firm. They went back and forth several times before Maria threw up her hands and bustled out, muttering. "What was that about?" Clara asked. "She says I am a fool, that bringing a white woman here will only bring trouble." He studied the fire. "She is not wrong." "Then why did you—" "I told you the desert brought you to me." He looked up, and she saw something haunted in those amber eyes. 3 winters ago, my sister was taken by Mexican slavers. We tracked them for days, but by the time we found their camp—" He didn't finish, but Clara could imagine. "I could not save her. When I saw you running, fighting even with no hope, I saw Paloma." The confession hung between them, heavy with grief. Clara found herself reaching out before she could think better of it, her fingers barely brushing his hand. "I'm sorry." He pulled back as if burned. "Your pity is not needed, only your cooperation." He stood abruptly. "Can you walk?" Clara tested her ankle, finding it tightly wrapped in cloth and herbs. It hurt, but held her weight. "I think so." "Good. Come. You need to understand where you are, what is expected." He helped her outside, and Clara got her first real look at the Apache camp. It was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 40 people, mostly women and children. The wickiups were arranged in a rough circle around a central area where cook fires smoked. Mountains rose on all sides, creating a natural fortress. The reaction to her appearance was immediate. Conversations stopped. Children peered from behind their mothers' skirts. A group of young men near the horse corral watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. "They think I'm bad luck," Clara said quietly. "Some do." Taza guided her toward a larger wickiup set slightly apart. "Others think you might be useful. We shall see which proves true." The large wickiup belonged to someone of obvious importance. An older woman sat outside it, working on a beautiful basket. Unlike Maria, this woman had an air of authority that needed no words to announce itself. Her hair was still mostly black despite her age, arranged in an elaborate style, and her dress was decorated with intricate beadwork. "Nantan Lupin," Taza said respectfully. The woman looked up, studying Clara with eyes that seemed to see through skin to soul. "So," she said in accented but clear English, "you are the torn dress woman who shot a white man to defend herself. Interesting." Clara blinked. "How did you—" "Little escapes Nantan Lupin," Taza explained. "She leads our council of women." The leader continued her scrutiny. "You have strength, but strength alone means nothing here. Can you work? Can you learn, or are you another useless white woman who expects to be waited upon?" "I can work." Clara lifted her chin. "I was a teacher. I'm used to difficult children." Nantan Lupan's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. Our children are not difficult. They are Apache. There is a difference. She said something to Taza in their language, her tone decisive. Taza's expression darkened. That is not... It is the only way. Nantan Lupan cut him off. You brought her here. You saved her life. By our law. This makes you responsible for her actions. If she brings harm to us, the punishment falls on you. I accept this. Do you? The leader's gaze sharpened. Even knowing what the men will say, what Kuruk will demand. A muscle jumped in Taza's jaw. I know what Kuruk wants. He will not have it. Then you know what must be done. Nantan Lupan returned to her basket. Take her to your lodge. Teach her our ways, if she cannot learn. If she tries to escape and bring soldiers, her blood and yours will water the desert. This is my judgment. Clara felt the ground shift under her feet. Wait, what does she mean? Take me to your lodge. Taza was already walking away. She hurried after him, grabbed his arm. What did she mean? He stopped, not looking at her. By our custom, an unmarried woman cannot live alone. She must be under the protection of a father, brother, or husband. But I'm not Apache. Your customs don't... You are in Apache land, eating Apache food, alive because of Apache mercy. He turned to face her, and she saw resignation in his eyes. Nantan Lupan has decided. Either you become my wife, or you are given to another who wants you. And trust me, you do not want Kuruk. As if summoned by his name, a warrior emerged from the horse corral. Where Taza was lean and controlled, this man was bulk and barely leashed violence. Scars crisscrossed his chest, and his eyes held the flat coldness of a reptile. So the white woman wakes. Kuruk said in heavily accented English. His gaze traveled over Clara in a way that made her skin crawl. Pretty, soft. She will not last a season. Taza, give her to someone who knows how to handle such creatures. She is under my protection, Taza said evenly. Protection. Kuruk spat the word. You always were too gentle. Your protection did not save Paloma. Taza moved so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment he was standing beside her. The next he had Kuruk pressed against a lodgepole, knife at his throat. Speak my sister's name again, he said very softly, and I will send you to join her. Kuruk laughed, unconcerned by the blade at his neck. There is the warrior I remember. Good. You will need him when the soldiers come for your white woman. If soldiers come, it will not be because of her. Taza released him, stepping back. It will be because fools like you cannot stop raiding settlements. We fight for our land. We die for our pride. Taza took Clara's arm. Come, we have preparations to make. As he led her away, Clara heard Kuruk call out something in Apache that made several men laugh. Taza's grip on her arm tightened, but he didn't respond. What did he say? She asked when they were out of earshot. Nothing worth repeating. He stopped at a smaller wickiup near the camp's edge. This is my lodge. Our lodge now? If... He trailed off, seeming to realize what he was saying. This is madness. Then don't do it. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. There must be another way. I could work for my keep, prove myself useful without... You do not understand. He turned to face her fully. Kuruk has wanted war with the whites since his family was killed at Camp Grant. If he claims you, he will use you to provoke attacks. Soldiers will come, and many will die Apache and white alike. Is that what you want? Of course not, but marriage... The word stuck in her throat. She'd sworn never again, never to give a man that power over her. I don't even know you. And I do not know you. His voice carried bitter amusement. Yet here we are, caught by circumstances neither of us chose. So I ask you, Clara, who shoots men who threaten her, which cage do you prefer? Mine. where you will be safe if not happy, or kuruks, where you will be neither. Put that way, the choice was no choice at all. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the last of her old life slip away like sand through fingers. When she opened them, Taza was watching her with something like understanding. "It need not be real," he said quietly. "A marriage of protection only. I will not. You need not fear me in that way." She almost laughed at the irony. In Albany, she'd been jilted for having too little respectability. Here, she was being offered marriage because she had too much. "And your people will accept this a marriage in name only. What happens in a lodge stays private, so long as appearances are maintained." He gestured to the wickiup. "I will sleep outside when weather permits. You will learn our ways, contribute to the camp. In time, perhaps another solution will present itself." "And if it doesn't?" He shrugged. "Then we endure. It is the Apache way." That evening, the ceremony was brief and strange. Nantan Lupan presided, speaking words Clara didn't understand while sprinkling pollen over their joined hands. There were no guests except Maria, who glowered throughout, and a younger woman named Ayana who seemed more curious than hostile. "It is done," Nantan Lupan announced in English, apparently for Clara's benefit. "You are bound by Apache law. May the spirits have mercy on you both." As rituals went, it was remarkably efficient. No white dress, no flowers, no organ music, just pollen and promises in a language she didn't speak, binding her to a man she'd known for 3 days. Clara wanted to laugh or cry. She wasn't sure which. "Come," Taza said when it was over. "Ayana will help you settle in." The girl, she couldn't be more than 17, took Clara's hand with a shy smile. "I speak English good," she said proudly. "I learn from traders. I teach you Apache. Yes, I'd like that." Clara managed. Inside the wickiup, Ayana showed her where things were kept: cooking pots, water gourds, blankets. It was sparse but clean, organized with the efficiency of someone used to moving camps quickly. "Taza is good man," Ayana said as she helped Clara arrange a sleeping area. "Sad man, but good. He will not hurt you." How can you be sure?" "Because he hurt too much already." The girl's young face turned serious. "Lost mother, lost sister, lost too much. But maybe," she glanced at Clara speculatively, "maybe desert brings healing now, not just hurt." After Ayana left, Clara sat alone in the wickiup that was now supposedly her home. Outside, she could hear the camp settling for night children being called to bed. Dogs barking, the low murmur of voices, normal sounds of life continuing despite the upheaval of her presence. Taza entered as the last light faded, moving quietly as always. "You need food," he said, setting down a bowl of stew. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway. Tomorrow you begin learning. It will be hard." Clara picked up the bowl, surprised to find the stew flavorful and filling. "What will you teach me?" "Survival." He pulled a blanket from a pile. "For now, sleep. Dawn comes early here." He started to leave, and Clara found herself calling out, "Taza!" He paused at the entrance. "Thank you for choosing the lesser evil." His smile was sad and fleeting. "Time will tell which evil is lesser. Sleep well, Clara." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the dying fire and the weight of a marriage that was both salvation and trap. Outside, an owl called mournfully, and Clara wrapped herself in unfamiliar blankets that smelled of smoke and sage, wondering what dawn would bring to this new life built on necessity and mutual desperation. Dawn in the Apache camp came with the sound of grinding stones. Clara woke to find Maria already at work outside, crushing corn into meal with rhythmic motions that spoke of decades of practice. The old woman glanced up as Clara emerged from the wickiup, her expression unreadable. "You sleep late," Maria observed in her careful English. "Apache women rise before sun." "I'll learn." Clara stretched muscles stiff from sleeping on the ground, despite the furs. Her body wasn't accustomed to such accommodations. Learning is good, but watching is better. Maria gestured to the metit stone beside her. Come, I show you. For the next hour, Clara's world narrowed to the simple act of grinding corn. Her arms ached, her back protested, and more meal ended up on the ground than in the basket. Maria corrected her grip repeatedly, muttering in Apache when Clara's clumsy movements sent corn flying. Is like this for all things, Maria said finally. White women make everything hard. Simple work becomes struggle. I'm trying. Trying is noise. Doing is quiet. The old woman took the grinding stone from Clara's blistered hands. Watch again. See rhythm, not just motion. Clara watched. Really watched this time. The way Maria's whole body moved in harmony. The angle of her wrists. The steady pressure that turned dried kernels into fine powder. When she tried again, it went marginally better. Improvement, Maria grudgingly admitted, small, but there. Ayana appeared as the sun climbed higher, carrying water gourds. Good morning, Clara O. You learn the metita. Very good. Very important. Very painful, Clara corrected, showing her reddened palms. Ayana laughed, a bright sound in the quiet morning. All good things bring pain first, like childbirth, like love, like... She caught Maria's sharp look and changed subjects quickly. Come, we get water now. Another thing you must learn. The path to the spring wound through juniper and pinon, the morning air crisp with resin scent. Other women were already there, filling containers and gossiping in rapid Apache. Conversations stuttered to a halt when they saw Clara. Ignore them, Ayana whispered. They are curious but also afraid. Give them time. One woman, perhaps a few years older than Clara, said something that made the others laugh. Ayana's face darkened. What did she say? Clara asked. Nothing kind. Lotus speaks with bitter tongue since her husband died in raid last year. Ayana filled her water gourds with quick efficiency. She says white woman's hands too soft for real work. Clara looked at her blistered palms, then at the watching women. Without thinking, she spoke. They're right. My hands are soft, but they won't stay that way. One of the older women translated, and something shifted in the group's posture. Not acceptance, but perhaps a degree less hostility. On the way back, Ayana taught her basic Apache words, tu for water, gocha for wickiup, shima for mother. Each word felt strange on Clara's tongue, but she persisted. You learn quick, Ayana observed. Taza will be pleased. Where is he? Clara hadn't seen him since the night before. Hunting with other men, sometimes gone 2, 3 days. We must be strong when men are away. She paused, then added carefully, Is hard for new wife when husband leaves so soon. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. It's fine. We barely know each other anyway. Sometimes that is best way to start. No expectations, no disappointments. Ayana's young face held wisdom beyond her years. My parents met on wedding day. Learned to love after. They spent the afternoon working gathering firewood, repairing baskets, helping prepare the communal evening meal. Clara's hands moved from merely blistered to actively bleeding, but she didn't complain. Each small task mastered felt like a tiny victory against those who expected her to fail. As darkness fell, the hunters returned. Clara heard them before she saw them, horses' hooves and men's voices carrying on the still air. She was stirring a pot of stew under Maria's watchful eye when Taza appeared. He looked tired, dust-covered, but satisfied. A deer carcass hung from his saddle. His eyes found Clara immediately. Taking in her changed appearance, the simple camp dress Ayana had given her, her hair braided back, the competent way she handled the cooking pot. You are learning, he observed, dismounting with fluid grace. Slowly, she showed him her damaged hands.
But yes.
Something flickered in his expression, approval, concern, before he turned to tend his horse. Come to the lodge after eating. We must talk. The evening meal was a communal affair, with families gathering around various fires. Clara sat with Maria and Ayanna, aware of the curious glances but no longer paralyzed by them. The stew she'd helped prepare was distributed, and no one spat it out, which she counted as success. When she entered the wickiup later, Taza was already there, cleaning his rifle by firelight. He'd washed off the trail dust, and his hair hung loose around his shoulders, still damp. Sit, he said without looking up. How was your first full day? Educational. Clara settled across from him, watching his hands move over the weapon with practiced ease. Maria thinks I might become adequate, eventually. High praise from her. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She told Nantan Lupan you work like a mule, stubborn and clumsy, but strong. I'll take it as a compliment. You should. Maria respects strength above all else. He set the rifle aside, finally meeting her eyes. But camp work is only part of what you must learn. He reached behind him, producing items that made Clara's breath catch. Her derringer, cleaned and oiled, her mother's cameo brooch, the small leather journal she'd kept since leaving Albany. How? I went back to the trader camp after bringing you here. These seemed personal. He pushed them toward her. The gun especially you should keep close. Not all threats come from outside our camp. Clara picked up the derringer, checking the chambers. Kuruk. Among others, my protection extends only so far. You must be able to protect yourself when I am not here. And you trust me with a weapon I could shoot you in your sleep. Could and will are different things. He leaned back, studying her. Besides, if you wanted me dead, poison would be simpler. Apache women know many plants. The casual way he discussed her potentially murdering him should have been disturbing. Instead, Clara found herself oddly touched by the trust it implied. Teach me, she said impulsively. Not the poison, I mean. Teach me to survive here. Really survive, not just exist. That was always the plan. He moved closer to the fire, adding wood. Tomorrow, I show you how to find food in the desert, read the weather signs, start fire without matches, practical things. And tonight we establish rules. His tone turned serious. This arrangement between us, it requires understanding. You may share this lodge, but you are safe from any unwanted advances. I will not touch you without permission. Clara felt tension she hadn't realized she carried ease slightly. And what do you expect from me? Appearance of a proper wife in public. Learn our ways, contribute to the camp's survival. Do not attempt escape or bring danger to my people. He paused. And perhaps friendship. This situation is neither of us chose, but we need not be enemies. I'd like that, Clara admitted. Friendship. They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Finally, Taza spoke again. There is something else. The fire, can you tend it through the night? Keep it alive? Of course, but why? Fire is life in the desert. Apache children learn young to never let it die. Each family's fire connects to the great fire of the people. When a lodge fire dies, it means death or abandonment. He demonstrated banking the coals properly, like this, fed slowly through the night. Clara moved closer, watching his hands shape the coals. Their shoulders almost touched, and she could smell the sage smoke scent that seemed part of him. My mother taught me this when I was small. He continued softly, said the fire holds the family spirit. My father laughed, called it woman's superstition, but when she died, her fire went out while he was away hunting. He never laughed about it again. How old were you? 8 winters. Paloma was only 4. His hands stilled on the fire tools. I tried to keep Mother's teachings alive for her, but I was just a boy playing at being grown. Not enough to save her when the time came. Clara found herself reaching out, her fingers barely touching his hand. You can't blame yourself for what slavers did. Can't I? He turned his hand palm up, and for a moment their fingers intertwined. I was hunting, gone 3 days. If I had been there, then you'd likely be dead too. Clara squeezed gently. And I'd be in Sonora now, or worse. He looked at their joined hands as if surprised to find them that way. You speak practically for a white woman. I've had practice at losing people. My mother when I was 12, 2 brothers to fever, a father left behind. She withdrew her hand slowly. Guilt is a luxury the living can't afford. Wise words. He returned to arranging the fire. Tell me your man in the east, the one who made you run. Did you love him? The question caught her off guard. I thought I did, but looking back, I think I loved what he represented more than who he was. Security, status, a life that made sense. She laughed bitterly. Shows what I know about love. Perhaps that is best. Love makes people foolish. Better to build on respect and necessity. Speaking from experience, his jaw tightened. There was someone. Before, she married another while I was away fighting. Chose safety over waiting. He shrugged. She made the practical choice. I cannot fault her for it. But it still hurts. Old wounds ache in cold weather. It does not mean they are not healed. He stood abruptly. The hour grows late. You should rest. Clara recognized the dismissal but didn't take offense. They'd shared more than either probably intended for one night. Where will you sleep? Outside, the weather is mild. Taza. She wasn't sure what she wanted to say. Thank you seemed inadequate. Will you teach me your word for fire? Ko. The word was soft, almost like a sigh. But there are many words. Ko for the flame itself, Dizi for the wood that feeds it, Bit is for the coals that last through the night. Bit is, she repeated, tasting the word. The enduring part. Yes. He paused at the entrance. You learn well. Clara, do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the Ko that must not die. Clara feted another piece of Dizi, watching the flames dance. Outside, she could hear the camp settling dogs barking, children being hushed, the distant whinny of horses. Her hands hurt, her back ached. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more chances to fail. But tonight, she had a fire to tend and the memory of fingers intertwined, of shared griefs and tentative understanding. Clara opened her journal, holding it close to catch the firelight. Day 4 in Apache camp. Or is it 5? Time moves differently here. I am married but not wedded, protected but not possessed, learning but not learned. The women think my hands too soft. And they're right, but calluses form from friction, and I have friction aplenty. Taza teaches me words, Ko for fire, but I think we are both bit as the coals that endure after the flame dies. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is how we survive this arrangement neither chose. Tomorrow he will teach me to read the desert. Tonight I tend the fire and do not let it die. Such small victories, but victories nonetheless. She closed the journal and banked the coals carefully, just as Taza had shown her. Through the smoke hole above, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere in the east. Her old life continued without her tea parties and calling cards, propriety and broken promises. But here, now, Clara Whitmore tended an Apache fire in an Apache lodge, her 2 soft hands learning strength, her heart learning. What she didn't know yet, but like the bit is glowing in the darkness, she would endure long enough to find out. The storm came without warning, as desert storms do. One moment the night sky blazed with stars, the next, black clouds swallowed the moon and lightning split the darkness. Clara barely had time to secure the water gourds before the wind hit, threatening to tear the wiki up apart. Inside now, Taza burst through the entrance, rain already soaking through his shirt. He'd been checking the horses when the storm struck. Clara helped him lash down the entrance flap, but the wind found every gap, driving rain horizontally through the lodge. The fire hissed and sputtered, fighting to stay alive. "The smoke hole," Clara started, but Taza was already moving, pulling a specially treated hide to partially cover the opening while still allowing smoke to escape. They worked together without words, saving what they could from the water, building up the fire's defenses. When the immediate crisis passed, they found themselves standing close in the center of the lodge, both breathing hard. "You did well," Taza said, pushing wet hair from his face. "Quick thinking with the gourds. Maria would never forgive me if I let them crack." Clara realized she was shivering, her dress soaked through. "She just finished teaching me to seal them properly. Maria's wrath is indeed fearsome." He moved to his storage area, pulling out a blanket. "Here, you need to get warm." Clara took the blanket gratefully, wrapping it around her shoulders. Outside, thunder crashed like boulders tumbling down a mountain. The Wikiup's frame groaned but held. "Will it last?" she asked, eyeing the bent poles with concern. "I built it. It will last." He fed more wood to the struggling fire, though we may not sleep much tonight, as if to emphasize his point. A particularly fierce gust sent water streaming through despite their precautions. Clara moved her bedding away from the leak, closer to the fire and closer to where Taza sat. "In Albany," she said, "storms meant closing windows and perhaps canceling garden parties. Nothing like this. Everything here is more immediate. Life, death, weather." He glanced at her. "Does it frighten you?" "Yes," she admitted. "But also, it feels more honest somehow. In society, dangers hide behind smiles and calling cards. Here, at least a storm announces itself." Lightning illuminated his face briefly, showing surprise. "You understand this? Good. Too many whites think the desert is empty, waiting to be filled with their farms and fences. They do not see it lives and breathes and takes its due." They sat in companionable silence for a time, listening to the storm's fury. The fire had stabilized, casting dancing shadows on the lodge walls. Clara found herself studying Taza's profile in the flickering light, the strong line of his jaw, the way his still damp hair fell past his shoulders. "Stop staring," he said without turning. "It makes a man nervous." Heat flooded Clara's cheeks. I was just—" "Wondering what you've bound yourself to?" His tone held wry humor. "A fair question. I wonder the same about you." "And what have you concluded?" He turned to face her fully. "That you are stronger than you look, stubborn as Maria says, but stubborn can be good. You adapt quickly, and you have kind hands." "Kind hands. When you touched mine last night, speaking of Paloma." His voice dropped lower. Not many would offer comfort to Apache over his dead sister. Even fewer would mean it. The air between them changed, charged like the storm outside. Clara became acutely aware of their proximity, of the way firelight played across his features, of her own heartbeat loud in her ears. "Taza," she breathed, not sure what she meant to say. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone with impossible gentleness. "Clara, this arrangement between us." She caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. "I know what we agreed, but tonight—" Thunder crashed overhead, drowning her words. When it faded, he was closer. "Tonight? I'm burning inside," she gasped, the words escaping before she could stop them. All the fear and loneliness and unexpected want of the past days crashed over her like the storm itself. "Ever since you found me, saved me, I've felt this fire that won't go out, won't let me rest. Clara." Her name was a warning and a plea. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't—" She started to pull back, mortified by her admission. but his hand tightened on hers. "Let me burn," he murmured, and the raw hunger in his voice made her breath catch. "You think you burn alone. Every night I sleep under stars rather than beside you. Every time you look at me with trust I do not deserve." Lightning flashed again, and in its brief illumination, she saw everything in his eyes: desire, conflict, a loneliness that matched her own. His fingers fed flames. Clara whispered, not sure if she was narrating or inviting, "Relentless, wild." He kissed her. It was nothing like Augustus's practiced courtship kisses. This was desert lightning, sudden and searing. His hands tangled in her hair, still damp from rain. She responded with equal fervor, all the careful boundaries they'd built dissolving like salt in water. He pulled her closer, and she went willingly. The blanket falling forgotten, his mouth traveled to her throat, and she gasped at the sensation, at the scratch of his unshaven jaw against her skin. Her hands found the hem of his wet shirt, tugging upward. "Clara," he breathed against her neck. "Are you certain this changes?" "Everything, I know." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm certain, no expectations, no promises beyond tonight, just let us burn together." Something shifted in his expression, the last wall crumbling. He captured her mouth again, and this time there was no hesitation. His hands were reverent and urgent by turns, learning the shape of her as she learned his. Scars under her fingertips told stories she'd hear someday. The lean strength of him, coiled and waiting, made her feel both safe and wild. They moved together to her sleeping furs, the storm a distant thing now compared to the tempest between them. He was patient despite his hunger, gentle despite his strength. When thunder crashed, neither noticed. The world had narrowed to touch and taste, to whispered Apache words she didn't understand but felt in her bones, to the sweet ache of two lonely people finding solace in each other. Afterward, they lay entwined, listening to the storm's gradual retreat. Clara's head rested on his chest, feeling his heartbeat slow to match hers. His fingers combed through her hair with absent tenderness. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. She considered, taking inventory of her body and heart. "No, only that the storm will end." He pressed a kiss to her crown. "Dawn brings back the world and all its complications. Then we don't let it dawn." She traced lazy patterns on his chest. "We stay here, in this moment between lightning and sunrise." "If only—" His arms tightened around her. "Clara, what happens now?" "Shh." She lifted up to kiss him softly. "Tonight we burned. Tomorrow we can return to being practical strangers if needed. But tonight we are bitters," he agreed. "The coals that endure." The fire had burned low while they were occupied. Moving reluctantly, they rebuilt it together, their bodies finding new rhythms, reaching past each other for wood, hands brushing, stolen kisses between tasks. When they finally settled back into the furs, the storm had faded to distant rumbles. "Will you stay?" Clara asked. "Inside, I mean, just for tonight." "Wild horses could not drag me away." He arranged them comfortably, her back against his chest, his arms secure around her waist. "Sleep, I will tend the fire." But Clara didn't sleep immediately. She lay in the circle of his warmth, marveling at the turn her life had taken. A week ago she'd been fleeing heartbreak on a dusty wagon. Now she lay in an Apache lodge, held by a man she barely knew but trusted instinctively. Their marriage suddenly more real than any ceremony could have made it. "Taza," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me burn." His response was wordless, a tightening of his arms, a kiss pressed to her shoulder. Outside, rain pattered gently on the lodge covering, the storm's fury spent. Inside, the fire crackled softly, fed by hands that had learned gentleness in the midst of wildness. When Clara finally slept, She dreamed not of Albany's manicured gardens or Augustus's cold farewell, but of lightning and desert flowers that bloomed only after storms. She dreamed of strong hands and amber eyes, of a man who spoke in 3 languages but said the most with silence. Morning would come with its challenges, suspicious looks, careful distances, the need to pretend nothing had changed when everything had. But for now, in the space between storm and sunrise, Clara Whitmore and Taza Redhawk were simply 2 people who had chosen to burn together rather than apart. The fire never died that night, fed by turns through the dark hours, tended by hands that found excuses to touch in passing. It burned steady and true, like the growing thing between them, unexpected, consuming, and strong enough to endure whatever storms might come. When dawn finally touched the smoke hole, painting the lodge walls gold and rose, Clara woke to find Taza watching her. His expression held wonder and worry in equal measure. "Good morning," she said softly. "Nantan," he replied. "It means both morning and chief. Appropriate, since you now rule this lodge." "I rule nothing." She reached up to touch his face. "We share the fire, the space, the whatever this is between us. And if it burns us both to ash?" Clara thought of her mother's favorite saying, "Better to burn than to freeze." She'd never understood it as a child. Now, held in the circle of Taza's arms with the memory of the night's fire still warm on her skin, she finally did. "Then we burn," she said simply, "but we burn together." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and the fire leaped higher as if in approval. Outside, the camp began to wake dogs barking, children laughing, the eternal sound of grinding stones. Reality encroached with each noise. "I should go," Taza said reluctantly. "Before—" "I know." Clara released him, already missing his warmth. "We're back to being careful strangers, not strangers." He dressed quickly, efficiently, but paused at the entrance. "Never strangers again. Clara, whatever face we show the world, remember I know now how you burn, and you know me." Then he was gone, leaving Clara alone with the fire and the memory of a storm that had changed everything. She rose slowly, her body bearing sweet evidence of the night's passion. As she dressed and prepared to face the day, she found herself humming something she hadn't done since leaving Albany. "Let them look," she thought, emerging into the rain-washed morning. "Let them whisper and wonder." They saw only the surface, the white woman who didn't belong, the Apache man who'd claimed her out of duty. They couldn't see the fire that burned between them now, the bitters that would endure long after the ashes of propriety had blown away. That secret warmth was theirs alone, and it would keep them through whatever trials the desert might bring. Clara touched her lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss, and smiled. She'd come west to escape a broken heart. Instead, she'd found a different kind of breaking, the kind that let the light in. The blue coats appeared on the ridge at midday, their brass buttons glinting in the desert sun like warning fires. Clara was helping Ayanna repair fishing nets when the alarm cry went up, a ululating sound that made her blood run cold. "Soldiers!" Ayanna breathed, dropping the nets. "Many soldiers." Women grabbed children, men reached for weapons. In moments, the peaceful camp transformed into organized chaos. Clara found herself swept along with the others toward the center of camp, where Nantan Lupan stood calm as a stone in a rushing river. "Where is Taza?" Clara asked Ayanna. "Hunting party went east. Not back for 2 days, maybe." The girl's face was pale beneath her tan. "This is bad. Clara, very bad." The soldiers descended slowly, deliberately, making a show of force. Clara counted at least 30 men, all armed, all wearing the hard expressions of those who'd come to do unpleasant duty. At their head rode a lieutenant whose pale blue eyes swept the camp with proprietary coldness. "I am Lieutenant Morrison," he announced when his troop had formed a semicircle around the gathered Apache. "I'm looking for a white woman reportedly held captive here, Clara Whitmore of Albany, New York." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs, beside her. Ayana gripped her hand tightly. Nantan Lupan stepped forward. "No captives here, only Apache." Morrison's smile was thin as a blade. "I'll be the judge of that. Men, search the camp, every lodge, every structure. The woman's safety is paramount." "You have no right." One of the younger warriors started forward, but Nantan Lupan's sharp gesture stopped him. "Let them search," she said in Apache. "They will find what they expect to find nothing." But Clara knew they would find her. Her sun-lightened hair, her pale skin, she couldn't hide what she was. And when they found her... "Wait," she stepped forward before she could lose her nerve. "I'm Clara Whitmore." The soldiers swiveled toward her like hunting dogs catching a scent. Morrison dismounted, approaching with the careful steps of a man expecting deception. "Miss Whitmore." He looked her up and down, taking in her Apache dress, her braided hair, the competent way she stood among the people. "Are you harmed? Have these savages?" "I'm unharmed." Clara lifted her chin. "And they're not savages. They saved my life when bandits attacked our wagon train." "Saved." Morrison tasted the word like something sour. "Is that what they call it? How long have you been held here?" "I'm not held. I'm—" She hesitated, knowing her next words would change everything. "I'm married to Taza Redhawk, by my own choice." The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison's face cycled through disbelief, disgust, and finally, cold fury. "Married to an Apache." He said it like discussing something unspeakably filthy. "Clearly you've been coerced, possibly drugged. Post-traumatic delusion is common in captivity cases." "I'm not deluded. I chose this." "No white woman would choose this." Morrison gestured to his sergeant. "Prepare to transport Miss Whitmore. We'll sort out this situation at Fort Defiance." "I won't go." Clara stepped back, closer to the Apache women. "You can't force me." Morrison's expression hardened. "Actually, I can. Section 12 of the Territorial Authority gives me broad powers to protect American citizens, even from themselves." He paused, letting threat color his tone. "Of course, I'd prefer to avoid unpleasantness. Surely these people wouldn't want violence brought to their camp over one confused woman." The threat was clear. Come quietly, or watch the soldiers punish the Apache for corrupting her. Clara looked at Nantan Lupan, seeing resignation in the older woman's eyes. "If I come," Clara said slowly, "you leave them in peace." "Assuming they cooperate fully." Morrison's smile returned, smug now. "Though I'll need to question this husband of yours when he returns. Assuming he exists and isn't a fiction created to protect your virtue." "He exists." Karuk stepped forward, and Clara was shocked to hear him defend Taza. "Taza Redhawk is known warrior. He took the white woman as wife according to our law." "Your law." Morrison practically spat the words. "Pagan ceremonies have no standing in civilized society. The woman comes with us. That's final." Clara felt the trap closing. If she resisted, the soldiers would use it as excuse for violence. If she went, Taza would return to find her gone, possibly ride into his own capture trying to find her. "I need to gather my things," she said, buying time to think. 5 minutes." Morrison gestured to 2 soldiers. "Accompany her. Ensure she doesn't try anything foolish." The soldiers followed her to the wickiup, standing guard outside while she entered, with shaking hands. Clara gathered her few possessions, the journal. The Derringer Morrison's men hadn't thought to search for her mother's cameo. She also grabbed one of Taza's knives, hiding it in the folds of her dress. "Think, Clara, think. There had to be a way out of this that didn't end in bloodshed." A shadow at the entrance made her turn. Maria stood there, having somehow slipped past the soldiers. "You go with them," the old woman said quietly. "His only way to protect people." "But Taza..." Taza is strong, smart. He will know what to do. Maria pressed something into Clara's hands, a small leather pouch. Medicine for strength. Hide it well. Maria, No time for words. You are Apache now, even if skin is white. Remember, Apache women bend but do not break. She gripped Clara's shoulders briefly. Be the desert wind. Seem to yield but never stop wearing down the rock. Then she was gone, leaving Clara clutching the medicine pouch. She hid it quickly beneath her dress just as Morrison appeared in the entrance. Time's up, Miss Whitmore. Clara emerged to find the entire camp watching. Children peeked from behind their mothers. Warriors stood rigid, hands near but not on weapons. She saw Lotus, who'd mocked her soft hands, now watching with something like respect. I need to leave a message, Clara said, for my husband. Morrison's jaw tightened. You persist in this delusion? Let her speak. Nantan Lupan commanded. It is her right. Clara faced the gathered Apache, speaking clearly in the phrases Ayana had taught her, praying her pronunciation was clear enough. Tell Taza the fire still burns. The bit is endorse. I go but am not gone. Several women nodded, understanding. Ayana had tears on her cheeks but stood straight and proud. Morrison mounted his horse with obvious impatience. Sergeant, bring her. But Clara walked to the waiting horse on her own, mounting without assistance despite her skirts. She would not be dragged from her chosen home like a criminal. As the soldiers formed up around her, she took one last look at the camp, the wiki-ups she'd learned to maintain, the fire circles where she'd ground corn and listened to stories, the people who'd begun to accept her. This isn't over, she said to Morrison as they rode out. Oh, but it is. His satisfaction was evident. You'll be on the next stage east. Your father has been notified, quite distraught to hear of your captivity. He's arranged passage home and, he paused meaningfully, treatment for your unfortunate delusions. Treatment. Clara knew what that meant. Doctors who specialized in female hysteria. Locked rooms and cold baths and medicines to make her compliant. They'd try to cure her of loving an Apache, of choosing a life they couldn't understand. But they didn't know Clara Whitmore had already been broken once by civilization's expectations. She'd survived that. She'd survive this too. As they climbed the ridge, she turned for one last look. The camp seemed small from here, vulnerable, but looks deceived in the desert. The Apache had survived centuries of attempts to destroy them. They would survive this too. And somewhere to the east, Taza would return from hunting to find her gone. Would he think she'd fled willingly? Would he come for her, or would Apache practicality win, let the white woman go back to her white world? Avoid the trouble she brought? Clara touched the hidden medicine pouch, feeling its weight against her ribs like a promise. Maria's words echoed, be the desert wind. Very well. Let Morrison think he'd won. Let him deliver her to Fort Defiance like a rescued maiden. She'd learned patience from the Apache women, learned to read sign and wait for opportunities. The sun beat down mercilessly as they rode toward the fort, but Clara barely felt it. Inside, the fire Taza had lit burned steady and hot, fed by determination and hope. She was no longer the abandoned woman who'd fled Albany in despair. The desert had remade her, and the Apache had given her strength she didn't know she possessed. Whatever came next, she would endure. Behind them, a dust devil whirled across the abandoned ridge, erasing their tracks as if they'd never been. But in the camp below, women sang warrior songs for the one who'd been taken, and men prepared for whatever would come next. The blood had not yet been spilled, but it gathered like storm clouds on the horizon, and in the space between capture and consequence. Clara Whitmore, Apache wife, desert survivor, woman caught between worlds, began to plan. The courtroom at Fort Defiance was a converted storage building that still smelled of grain and gunpowder. Clara sat rigidly in a hard wooden chair, her Apache dress replaced by a borrowed cotton frock that felt like a costume from another life. 3 days had passed since her rescue. 3 days of locked rooms and pitying looks and questions that assumed her answers were lies. Now she faced a military tribunal, 3 officers who would determine her fate and, by extension, Taza's. This hearing will determine the mental competency of Miss Clara Whitmore, Colonel Jenkins announced, his white whiskers bristling with authority, and whether criminal charges should be filed against the Apache known as Taza Redhawk for kidnapping and, he paused delicately, corruption of a white woman. Clara's appointed advocate, a nervous young lieutenant named Fletcher, shifted beside her. He'd tried to convince her to claim coercion, temporary madness, anything but the truth. She'd refused. Miss Whitmore, Colonel Jenkins began. Please describe the attack on your wagon train. Clara recounted the events clearly, the bandits, the massacre, her escape and recapture. The officers nodded along until she reached Taza's arrival. He saved me, she stated firmly. Without him, I would have died in the desert or been sold into slavery in Mexico. A convenient rescue, Lieutenant Morrison interjected from his seat as witness. Almost as if planned. Lieutenant, Colonel Jenkins warned. You'll have your turn. He returned his attention to Clara. After this rescue, were you taken by force to the Apache camp? I was injured. He carried me because I couldn't walk. Against your will? Clara met his gaze steadily. I had no will but survival. He offered that. The questioning continued for an hour, every detail of her time with the Apache dissected, examined for signs of coercion or corruption. Clara answered truthfully, watching their faces harden with each response that didn't fit their narrative. You claim you married this savage willingly. Major Barnes, the youngest of the 3, seemed genuinely perplexed. I claim nothing. I state fact, and Taza is no savage. He speaks 3 languages, knows the desert like you know your military manuals, and showed me more genuine kindness than, she bit off the comparison to Augustus, than many civilized men. Stockholm Syndrome, Morrison muttered, loud enough to be heard. Classic captive delusion. Fletcher finally found his courage. Objection. The lieutenant is not a medical expert. Noted. Jenkins looked tired. Miss Whitmore, you must understand how this appears. A educated woman from good family, choosing to live as a forgive-me squaw, it suggests mental impairment. Or it suggests that I found something with the Apache I never had in Albany. Clara's temper, long held in check, began to fray. Respect, purpose, a life where my worth wasn't measured by my bloodline or my father's bank account. Nevertheless, Major Barnes pressed, you must see that no legal marriage can exist between a white woman and an Indian. Whatever ceremony was performed has no standing in law. Whose law? Clara stood abruptly, ignoring Fletcher's attempt to restrain her. The same law that let those bandits massacre innocent travelers while the army was nowhere to be found. The same law that would have let me be sold like cattle if Taza hadn't intervened. Miss Whitmore, please. I am not Miss Whitmore. Her voice rang clear in the small space. I am Clara Redhawk, wife of Taza Redhawk by Apache law and my own choice. I choose this. Why is that so impossible for you to understand? The doors burst open before anyone could respond. A commotion outside, shouts, horses, the sound of weapons being drawn. Then Taza walked in, flanked by soldiers with rifles trained on him. Clara's heart leaped and broke simultaneously. He'd come for her, just as she'd hoped and feared. His hair was tied back, his Anglo clothes an obvious attempt to appear civilized, but his eyes burned with barely controlled fury. I am Taza Redhawk, he announced. I hear you question my wife's choice. Question me instead. Restrain that man, Jenkins ordered, but Taza raised his hands peacefully. I come without weapons. I come to speak truth, if white man's court can hear it. Jenkins hesitated, curiosity warring with protocol. This is highly irregular. So is putting a free woman on trial for choosing her husband. Taza responded, "But I follow your rules. Let me speak." After hurried consultation, the tribunal agreed. Taza was allowed to stand beside Clara, though soldiers remained close. "You claim this woman as your wife?" Jenkins asked. "She is my wife, by Apache law, by her choice and mine." Taza's English was carefully precise. No force, no trickery. She could have left any day. She stayed. "Apache law has no standing here." Barnes insisted. "Then your law has no standing in Apache land where we married." Taza's logic was sharp. "Or does American law claim all land, even that not surrendered by treaty?" It was a dangerous question, touching on the raw edges of territorial disputes. Morrison jumped in quickly. "The woman is an American citizen. That supersedes—" "I was an American citizen when bandits killed everyone around me." Clara interrupted. "Where was America's protection then I was an American citizen bleeding in the desert? Taza didn't ask my citizenship before saving my life." "Miss Whitmore, Mrs. Redhawk, whoever you are." Jenkins looked genuinely frustrated now. "Surely you must see the impossibility of this. Even if we accept your attachment is genuine, society will never accept such a union. You'll be outcasts everywhere." "We already are outcasts," Clara said quietly. "I was cast out of Albany society for having Irish blood. Taza's people are cast out of lands they've lived on for generations. At least as outcasts together, we choose our exile." Fletcher surprised everyone by standing. "If I may, Colonel. Mrs. Redhawk raises valid points about the law's failure to protect her. Furthermore, there's no evidence of crime here. Unusual circumstances, yes, but no actual violation of statute." "She's clearly been influenced," Morrison started. "I've been influenced by kindness, Lieutenant." Clara rounded on him. "By being treated as a person of worth rather than damaged goods. By learning that there are different ways to live than the narrow path Albany society approved." She turned back to the tribunal. "If that's corruption, then I embrace it gladly." Taza spoke quietly in Apache, and Clara understood enough to catch the meaning, "Be strong. Little fire. Not much longer." "What did he say?" Jenkins demanded. "He called me his fire," Clara translated freely. "Because I burn too bright for narrow minds to understand." Barnes leaned forward. "Mrs. Clara, I have a daughter near your age. If she were in your position, I'd want her protected, even from her own choices. Can you not see we're trying to help you?" Clara's expression softened slightly. "I see men trying to fit an unusual situation into usual boxes, but Major Barnes, would you want your daughter forced into a life she didn't choose? Locked away for the crime of loving differently than expected?" "It's not love," Morrison insisted. "It's delusion brought by trauma." "Then let me be deluded." Clara took Taza's hand publicly for the first time. "Let me be traumatized and corrupted and whatever other labels make you comfortable. But let me choose my own path." The tribunal huddled in conference. Clara felt Taza's thumb stroke across her knuckles, a tiny gesture of support that meant everything. Finally, Jenkins spoke. "This tribunal finds itself in unprecedented territory. While we cannot condone or recognize the alleged marriage, we also find no clear evidence of criminal conduct by Mr. Redhawk." He paused heavily. "However, Miss Whitmore's mental state remains concerning. We recommend protective custody pending full psychiatric evaluation." "No," Clara and Taza said simultaneously. "It's for your own good," Barnes added kindly. "A few weeks of proper care." "Imprisonment," Clara corrected. "You mean imprisonment for the crime of choosing love over convention." "If you attempt to detain her," Taza said quietly, "I will consider it kidnapping, as will my people." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Everyone knew what Apache retaliation looked like. Morrison stood angrily. "Are we to be threatened by savages in our own fort, eh?" Are we to be judged by men who see only savagery where survival exists? Clara shot back. Who call love delusion because it doesn't match their patterns. Fletcher cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise misses. Red Hawk could remain at the fort voluntarily for a period, to demonstrate her stability, with freedom to leave if she chooses. And Taza, Clara asked, would need to camp outside fort boundaries, for everyone's safety. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than forced separation. Clara looked at Taza, reading agreement in his eyes. And 1 week, she said. I'll stay 1 week to prove I'm not deluded, but as a free woman, not a prisoner, and daily visits with my husband. Jenkins clearly wanted to object to the term husband, but recognized the futility. Agreed. 1 week. But if you attempt to leave, I won't. Clara squeezed Taza's hand once more. I have nothing to run from and everything to prove. The tribunal dispersed with obvious relief. As soldiers escorted Taza out, he paused beside her. The fire still burns, he said in Apache. Bit this, she responded. The coals endure. Then he was gone, leaving Clara to face a week of proving her sanity to men who couldn't imagine choosing love over society's approval. But she'd learned patience from Apache women and strategy from watching Nantan Lupan navigate difficult situations. She would play their game, speak their language, wear their approved clothes, and in 7 days, she would walk out of Fort Defiance a free woman, returning to the life and love she'd chosen. The sun was setting as Clara was escorted to her voluntary quarters. Through the window, she could see Taza's small camp taking shape beyond the fort boundaries. He would wait. She would endure. And their love labeled delusion by those who couldn't understand it would prove stronger than all the tribunal's judgments. In her pocket, Maria's medicine pouch rested against the hidden knife. Desert wind, the old woman had said. Clara smiled grimly. The officers of Fort Defiance had no idea what kind of storm they'd invited into their orderly world. The week had begun. The escape came on the 6th night, aided by an unlikely ally. Lieutenant Fletcher appeared at Clara's door just after midnight, his young face grave in the lamplight. Mrs. Red Hawk, he whispered urgently, you need to leave, now! Clara was already dressed. She'd been sleeping in her clothes all week, sensing something shifting in the fort's atmosphere. What's happened? Morrison's convinced Colonel Jenkins to reverse the agreement. They're planning to ship you east on tomorrow's stage, willing or not. Fletcher glanced nervously down the corridor. I've arranged a distraction. The gate guards will be called away in about 10 minutes. Your husband waits beyond the walls. Why are you helping us? Fletcher's jaw tightened. Because I've seen what happens to women sent to those hospitals for nervous conditions. My sister, he shook his head. Just go. Take the supply corridor, then straight to the east wall. And Mrs. Red Hawk, don't come back. Clara gripped his hand briefly. Thank you. Go, he urged again, before I remember my duty. She slipped through darkened hallways, her Apache training serving her well. Weeks of moving silently through camp had taught her to place her feet carefully, to breathe with the rhythm of night sounds. The supply corridor was empty as Fletcher had promised, and she could hear commotion from the other side of the fort. Whatever distraction he'd arranged was working. At the east wall, a rope hung waiting. Clara climbed quickly, her hands sure despite the darkness. At the top, she paused, looking back at Fort Defiance one last time. Somewhere in those buildings, men slept peacefully, certain they knew what was best for her. Tomorrow they'd wake to find her gone, their captive bird flown. Jump! Came Taza's voice from below. I will catch you! She didn't hesitate. The fall was brief, ending in strong arms that held her tight for just a moment before setting her on her feet. Can you ride? He asked. Like the wind. 2 horses waited his painted pony and a sturdy mare. They mounted in silence, but before they could ride out, Another figure emerged from the shadows. Ayana, leading a pack horse. Nantan Lupin says you cannot go alone, the girl explained quickly. Too dangerous. She sends supplies and... She hesitated. Other news. What news? Taza's voice was sharp. I tell as we ride, must go now. They rode hard through the night, following paths Clara couldn't see, but Taza navigated unerringly. Only when dawn tinged the eastern sky did they slow, taking shelter in a narrow canyon where water seeped from rock walls. Now, Taza said to Ayana. What news? The girl's young face was troubled. Karuk leads war party. Says if whites steal Apache women, Apache will take white settlements. Many young men follow him. Nantan Lupin cannot stop them without splitting tribe. Clara felt ice in her veins. This is because of me. This is because of Karuk's hate, Taza corrected firmly. You are excuse, not cause. Also, Ayana continued reluctantly, there is more. Army sends many soldiers to find you. They say Taza kidnapped officer's woman. Big reward for capture. Officer's woman? Clara was confused. But I'm not... Morrison, Taza said grimly. He tells lies to make crime worse. We cannot go back to camp now. Would bring soldiers to our people. Then where? Clara asked, though she suspected the answer. Hidden Valley. Ayana smiled slightly. Old refuge in sacred mountains, where Apache go when nowhere else is safe. Nantan Lupin says you stay there until soldiers give up search. They traveled for 3 days, moving mostly at night, resting in hidden places during daylight. Clara learned to sleep in the saddle, to eat dried meat and mesquite cakes without stopping, to read the subtle signs of pursuit in Taza's tensed shoulders. On the second night, Ayana grew feverish. They were forced to stop while Taza built a shelter and Clara tended the girl with Maria's medicines. Is punishment, Ayana muttered in her delirium. Spirit's angry. I help white woman steal Apache man. Hush, Clara soothed, bathing her burning forehead. No one stole anyone. But Ayana's words haunted her. How many would suffer for her choices? How much blood would water the desert before this ended? By morning, the fever had broken. Ayana was weak but lucid, able to ride if they went slowly. But slow meant dangerous, and Taza's worry showed in the harsh lines around his mouth. There, he said as the sun reached its zenith on the 3rd day. Hidden Valley. Clara saw nothing but sheer cliff faces and tumbled rocks. Then Taza led them into what looked like a dead-end canyon, around a massive boulder, and suddenly paradise. The valley opened before them like a secret jewel. Green grass grew thick around a natural spring. Ancient cottonwoods provided shade. Cliff dwellings, abandoned for generations, offered shelter. It was perfect isolation, beautiful and terrible in its completeness. Home, Taza said simply, until safe. They spent the first days establishing camp in one of the better-preserved cliff houses. Ayana recovered quickly, youth and Apache toughness serving her well. She helped Clara learn the valley's secrets, which plants were food, where to set snares, how to read weather signs in this protected place. But it was the nights that transformed everything, with danger temporarily held at bay and Ayana sleeping soundly nearby. Clara and Taza could finally just be, no eyes watching, no roles to play, just two people learning each other in the darkness. Tell me about your childhood, Clara asked one night as they sat by their small fire. What is to tell? I was boy, then warrior, now man. But at her patient silence, he continued, my father was Mexican captive who earned his place among us. My mother was daughter of chief. I grew up between worlds, never fully either. Like our child would be, Clara said softly, voicing what she'd suspected for days. Taza went very still. Clara, I'm fairly certain the sickness in the mornings, the changes... She touched her still flat stomach. Are you angry? Angry. He pulled her close, his hand joining hers over where their child grew. I am frightened, grateful, worried, but not angry. Never angry about this. A baby born between worlds, Clara murmured. Neither fully white nor Apache. Both, Taza corrected. Not neither, both, like morning star that is both night and day. They held each other as the fire burned low, each lost in thoughts of an uncertain future. A child complicated everything: escape, survival, belonging. But it also anchored them, made their connection more than just choice or passion. I want our child to know both worlds, Clara said finally. Your language and mine. Your stories and mine. Dangerous gift, knowing too much. His voice held old pain. Sometimes easier to be one thing only. But not better, Clara insisted. Not stronger. Days blended together in the hidden valley. Clara's body changed subtly, adapting to new life. They lived simply but well. Taza hunted. Clara gathered and preserved food. Ayana kept watch and helped both. It was almost peaceful, if one could forget the world beyond the canyon walls. The reminder came with the autumn's first chill. Ayana, returning from a scouting expedition, brought news that shattered their fragile paradise. Soldiers everywhere, she reported breathlessly. Also bounty hunters. They search every canyon, question every trader, and Kuruk. She paused, gathering courage. Kuruk attacked stage station. 3 whites dead. Now army wants all Apache punished. We have to leave, Clara said immediately. Go further west, maybe California. No. Taza's voice was firm. Running makes us pray forever. And in your condition, he touched her gently rounded belly. Too dangerous. Then what? I go back, face white man's justice, show them Apache honor. Absolutely not. Clara's fierce response surprised them all. You think I'd let you sacrifice yourself, that I'd raise our child without a father? Better than child without mother. They would not hang woman, especially pregnant woman. But Apache man who kidnapped officer's woman, he shook his head. Then we find another way. Clara insisted. There must be... A sound outside cut her off. All 3 froze. Hands moving to weapons. The sound came again, horses, moving carefully up the hidden trail. How? Ayana breathed. No one knows this place. Someone always knows, Taza said grimly, positioning himself between the women and the entrance. But the voice that called out wasn't military. It was old, female, and speaking Apache. Nantan Lupen! Clara gasped. The elder entered with 2 warriors, her dignity undiminished by the hard journey. Foolish children, she said, encompassing all 3 with her stern gaze. You think you can hide from world and valley forever? Grandmother, Taza used the respectful address. We had no choice. Always choices, some hard, some harder. She studied Clara with knowing eyes. You carry child. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded. Then time for hiding ends. Child needs tribe. Not just parents. And tribe needs unity. Not war between young men over white woman. What do you propose? Taza asked. Nantan Lupan smiled, and Clara was reminded that this woman had survived decades of conflict through wisdom, not just strength. We make new story. Better story than soldiers tell. She settled herself comfortably, as if discussing weather. Clara was never kidnapped. She travels to visit cousins at Fort Grant when rescued by Apache. Grateful. She stays to teach Apache children English useful skill in changing world. She and Taza fall in love. Marry properly. Very romantic. Newspapers love such stories. But Morrison... Lieutenant Morrison already transferred after unfortunate incident with Commander's daughter. Young Fletcher speaks well of you to new officers. Story can change if told right way. Hope bloomed in Clara's chest. It could work. With help. I bring letter from Indian Agent Thomas. He owes favor from when we helped recover his stolen cattle. He will verify story, make marriage legal in White Eyes." She produced a carefully wrapped document. "But cannot stay here. Must come back. Face questions with truth instead of hiding." Clara looked at Taza, reading the same mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. It was risk, terrible risk. But what was the alternative? A life in hiding, their child never knowing community, always running. "When?" Taza asked. "Now, before winter makes travel hard, before belly shows too much harder to claim recent marriage with big baby bump." Nantan Lupan said practically. They packed that night, preparing to leave the sanctuary that had sheltered their love. As Clara took one last look at the valley, she felt Taza's hand on her shoulder. "Afraid?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also ready. I'm tired of hiding what we are." "Desert wind," he murmured, wearing down mountain of prejudice. "Together," she added, covering his hand with hers. Ayana, recovered fully and eager for home, practically danced with impatience. "We go now, see family again." "We go," Nantan Lupan confirmed. "To whatever waits, but we go as Apache together, strong, adapting but never breaking." They rode out as dawn touched the valley's rim, leaving safety for uncertainty. But Clara carried new strength now, not just her own, but the life growing within her. The man beside her, the people who'd chosen to claim her despite everything. The hidden valley would wait, eternal and patient, for other refugees from an unbending world. But Clara and Taza rode toward a different refuge, the fragile possibility of a life lived openly. Their love acknowledged if not understood. Their child born into challenge, but also into choice. Behind them, the wind erased their tracks. Ahead, the trail led home. The first snow of winter dusted the mountains as Clara gave birth. The labor was long and difficult, with only Maria and Nantan Lupan attending her in the traditional way. Taza waited outside the wickiup as custom demanded, his hands carving a cradle from pine wood to keep from pacing. "Push, child," Maria commanded, her ancient hands surprisingly gentle. "Your baby is strong but stubborn like both parents." Clara gripped the birthing rope, every muscle straining. Through the haze of pain, she heard Taza singing softly outside a warrior's song, asking the spirits to guard his family. The sound gave her strength for one final push. A cry split the dawn air, loud, fierce, unmistakably alive. "A son," Nantan Lupan announced, cleaning the baby with practiced efficiency. Born between night and day, between seasons, a child of changes. Clara reached for her baby with trembling arms. He was perfect dark hair like his father, but with her gray eyes, his skin was golden bronze, marking him clearly as both and neither. "Taza, let the grandmothers finish first," Maria chided gently. "Men know nothing of new babies." But when they finally allowed Taza inside, Clara saw tears on the warrior's face as he beheld his son. He touched the baby's tiny fist with one finger, his expression soft with wonder. "What shall we name him?" Clara asked. "Samuel," Taza said immediately. "For your father's people, but also Dakota, friend to everyone in the old tongue. He will need to be both." Samuel Dakota Redhawk. Clara tested the name. A long name for such a small person. "He will grow into it," Nantan Lupan said with satisfaction. "This child is bridge between worlds. His name should honor both." The months that followed were a careful dance of survival and diplomacy. Indian Agent Thomas had indeed smoothed their way, presenting their story as a romantic tale of frontier understanding. Some believed it, others remained suspicious. But with Morrison gone and Fletcher speaking in their favor, official harassment ceased. Still, challenges remained. The Apache camp had to relocate twice to avoid conflict with settlers. Game grew scarce as more homesteaders arrived, and Karuk's faction continued raiding, bringing military retaliation that affected all Apache regardless of guilt. Clara established a small school, teaching Apache children English as promised. To her surprise, several settlers' children began attending too, their parents pragmatic enough to see the value of understanding their neighbors. "You're building something important," Taza told her one evening as she prepared lessons. Samuel slept in his cradle, one tiny fist wrapped around a leather amulet from Maria. "Building bridges is slow work," Clara replied, showing him where little Mary Patterson had written her first Apache word next to its English equivalent. "But look, she wrote friend in both languages. Her father shot at our hunters last month. And now his daughter learns our words." Clara touched his face gently. "Change comes through children, my love, always through children." But change came violently that spring. Karuk, emboldened by successful raids, attacked a military supply train. The retaliation was swift and brutal, not aimed at his war party, but at the nearest Apache camp. 20 dead, including children. The survivors fled to Clara and Taza's camp, bringing rage and grief. Karuk himself appeared, wounded but defiant. "You see," he spat at Taza, "this is what your peace brings. Dead children, burned wiki-ups. Your white woman's teaching changes nothing. Your raids brought this." Taza replied coldly, "You attack. They punish innocence. When will you learn?" "When will you?" Karuk's eyes burned with fever and hate. "They will never accept us. Never. Your half-blood child will be neither white nor Apache, nothing. Better to die fighting than live begging." Clara stepped forward before Taza could respond. "You're wrong. Samuel will be both, not neither. Strong in 2 traditions instead of limited by 1. White woman speaks of Apache strength." Karuk laughed bitterly. "You weaken us, divide us. Better you had died in desert." "Perhaps," Clara said calmly. "But I didn't, and neither will my son. Neither will the children I teach. We'll survive your war and their prejudice both." Karuk raised his hand as if to strike her, but froze as a rifle cocked. Fletcher stood at the camp's edge, having arrived with supplies from the fort. "Problem here?" the lieutenant asked mildly. "No problem," Clara said before anyone else could speak. "Karuk was just leaving to tend his wounds. Maria has medicine if he needs it." The war leader looked between them, all the white woman who spoke with authority in his camp, the Apache warrior who allowed it, the white soldier who came in peace. Something shifted in his expression, exhaustion replacing rage. "The world changes," he said finally. "I cannot stop it, but I don't have to watch." He limped away, several young warriors following. That night, as Clara nursed Samuel, she asked Taza, "Will he come back?" "No, he goes to Mexico, maybe further. He will fight until fighting kills him." Taza stroked his son's soft hair. "But others stay. Your students, their families, the ones tired of running." Enough to build on. Enough to try. Summer brought unexpected visitors. A photographer from back east, documenting vanishing peoples. Heard about the white woman teaching Apache children. He wanted to capture the story. Make them famous. "Absolutely not," was Clara's first response. But Nantan Lupin, ever strategic, saw opportunity. Pictures in white man's newspapers could help. Show Apache as people, not savages. Show your school working. So they posed Clara with her students, both Apache and white, studying together. Taza demonstrating traditional skills while wearing his Anglo clothes. Samuel in his cradle. Representing the future, the photographer was respectful, genuinely interested in their story. "You've created something unique here," he told Clara. "A real community between peoples." "Created nothing," she corrected. "Just refused to accept that difference means enemy." When the photographs appeared in Eastern newspapers months later, they caused sensation. Letters poured in, some hateful, some curious, many supportive. A teaching college sent books. A missionary society sent funds which Nantan Lupan promptly used for ammunition and wool blankets. Practical as always. But fame brought danger too. Samuel was barely walking when they came bounty hunters who'd heard about the white squaw and her half-breed brat. They waited until Taza was away hunting, thinking Clara easy prey. They learned otherwise. Clara saw them approaching and sent Ayana running with Samuel. Then she faced them with her father's derringer and Taza's rifle, heart steady despite her fear. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, "you're trespassing. Now, little lady." The leader smiled with tobacco-stained teeth. "We heard you might need rescuing. Proper white woman shouldn't be out here playing Indian. I'm exactly where I choose to be." She kept the rifle trained on them. "Leave, now." Feisty, worth more that way. He stepped forward. Clara shot the ground at his feet, lever actioning another round immediately. "Next one goes higher." "You wouldn't dare." The second shot took his hat off. "I've lived Apache for 3 years. Sir, I've birthed a child with only old women helping. I've survived storms, soldiers, and suspicious tribesmen. Do you really think 3 flea-bitten bounty hunters frighten me?" They must have seen something in her eyes, the same steel that had survived everything else, because they backed away slowly. "This ain't over," the leader warned. "Yes, it is." Fletcher appeared with a squad of soldiers, having been alerted by Ayana. "These men are under arrest for attempted kidnapping." As the soldiers led them away, Fletcher tipped his hat to Clara. "Ma'am, heard the shots. Figured you had it handled, but thought backup couldn't hurt." "Thank you, Lieutenant, though I notice you waited until I'd scared them proper." He grinned. "Seemed ashamed to interrupt." That was some shooting. When Taza returned and heard the story, he held her and Samuel so tightly she could barely breathe. "I should have been here. You were hunting. We need food more than protection most days." She pulled back to look at him. "I'm not helpless. Husband, you taught me that." "I taught you to shoot. You taught yourself to be warrior." As Samuel grew, walking then running between 2 worlds, changes came faster. The railroad pushed closer. Settlers arrived in waves. The Apache were pressed onto smaller reservations, their freedom shrinking like water in drought. But in their small corner of the territory, something else grew. Clara's school expanded. Mixed families like theirs became less rare. Children played together who would have been enemies a generation before. On Samuel's 5th birthday, they held a celebration mixing traditions, Apache blessing songs and Christian hymns. Traditional foods and Clara's attempted apple pie, Maria still laughed about its consistency. Gifts ranging from beaded moccasins to picture books. "Look what we made," Clara said to Taza that night, watching their son sleep surrounded by tokens from both cultures. "A beginning," Taza agreed. "Maybe not the ending we wanted, but beginning nonetheless. No regrets." She echoed her words from their first night together. "No regrets. The desert took everything I thought I wanted, and gave me everything I needed." They stood together in the doorway of their home, no longer a temporary wickiup, but a solid cabin built with help from both communities. The desert stretched endlessly beyond, painted silver by moonlight. Somewhere out there, the old ways were dying. Somewhere else, new prejudices were being born. But here, tonight, a child slept peacefully, dreaming in 2 languages. His parents watched over him, their love a bridge across worlds that were never meant to touch. It wasn't the fairy tale Clara had once imagined in Albany, or the traditional life Taza had been raised to expect. It was harder, it was complicated, it was real, and it was theirs. The fire still burned in the hearth, not the desperate flame of their first passion, but the steady warmth of biddies, the coals that endure. Outside, the desert wind sang its eternal song, wearing down mountains 1 grain at a time, patient and relentless as love itself. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, The answer came swift and sure across the darkness, a promise that even in the vast desert, no one need be alone. Clara smiled and closed the door, returning to warmth and light in the future they were building one careful day at a time. The world might never fully accept them, but they had carved out a space where acceptance mattered less than understanding, where different didn't mean enemy, where love could grow in even the harshest ground. It was enough. It was everything. It was home. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love and survival in the Old West. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what this tale meant to you. If you enjoyed Clara and Taza's journey, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more authentic frontier stories. Don't forget to like this video and hit the hype button to help more people discover these tales of courage, passion, and the bridges we build across seemingly impossible divides. Until next time, partners.